Hey everybody, this is a companion piece to my short review of The Lodge, which I was quite disappointed with. If you are listening on this one, then you, I would expect, have already either seen the movie or you don't care about it being spoiled because there will be spoilers here. Quick introduction, I don't usually do negative reviews or reviews about why I don't like things. I might give my honest review of something, but I don't usually just go out of my way to say what I don't like about things. In fact, the last time I did this, I think, was Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom, if I can even remember the name of that thing. But this movie, I was very excited for, I had high expectations for, so I was extra disappointed and almost angry about how stupid and how bad this movie ended up being, in my opinion. This is all based on personal preference. I'm going to give you the 10 things that I hated about The Lodge. 1. The overall concept doesn't make any sense. Now, I understand in a horror movie you can have some pretty wild and out there concepts, but this one is especially nonsensical in relation to the actual world it creates. So both kids resent and are angry that their dad is taken up with this woman who essentially is the cause of their mother committing suicide. So not only are they really angry with her, but the woman herself is known to have been in this cult, a murderous cult, which she's the only one to survive. There's footage of her filming all the bodies. It's reasonable to think that she is at least a little bit unusual, if not unhinged, or at least somewhat scarred by the experience. And then the dad thinks, this is a great idea. Let's put them all together in an isolated location right before Christmas. It makes no sense that anyone would put their kids alone in that situation, especially when it sounds like this is basically the first time they've ever really hung out with her. It wouldn't be fair in a reasonable sense to the kids or the woman. And the best circumstance, and in the worst circumstance, it might be dangerous, which it, of course, turns out to be. Add to that he thinks it's a great idea to show his new wife, who might be unstable, the combination to the gun and how to use the gun. And let's train her how to use the gun. Okay, bye. I'm going to go now. Have fun with the kids. Terrible. 2. The Dollhouse. Okay, I've read a couple things saying that they came up with the idea of the dollhouse in this movie before Hereditary came out. But the fact is, Hereditary did come out. And it was at least 2 years before this was released that Hereditary came out. So once they saw Hereditary, and Hereditary was a big deal, and Hereditary strongly featured miniature dollhouse-like dioramas in it, that you would think, we can't really use that as a major feature in our movie, or we're going to get a lot of comparisons. But apparently they thought it was still fine. Not to mention that Hereditary, it was a key element to use the miniatures, and it actually was a feature that told you a lot about the character of the mom and told you a character about the family and what they were going with. It was a metaphor that made sense in the world and was a big part of the story. Here it's just like a crutch. You know, they keep showing the dolls and you keep seeing the dollhouse, and the kids do it, and they make like they have the kid hanging in the dollhouse, so then the dad finds it. He's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Silly, stupid, dumb. Number 3, the shining pattern. Well, you're going to see this come back several times in this list, but they definitely like to borrow things from other movies. Now, there are homages, and that's understood. Something like Midsummer is an homage to The Wicker Man, but it does its own thing, so you can accept that. But here you have over and over and over, they're using better movies to make this movie, to prop this movie up. So an example in this one, you have the Shining pattern. Okay, most people say like, well, it isn't anything like the Shining, but think about it. So you've got kids and a possibly unstable person being taken to an isolated location, and they are in the snow, and then the person who knows the place best leaves them there. They are there, and there's a big question on whether the person's going insane or whether there actually is some kind of supernatural force going on. Right before things come to a head, they are basically snowed in, And the person who left them in the first place comes back at the last minute to help them and is killed right as they come inside the location. Sounds a little bit like The Shining, doesn't it? I know that otherwise it might not be, but that's just a little bit too coincidental. 4. Is it all in her head? This is the kind of thing that is terrible and stupid about these kind of movies. First of all, if it's all in her head and she's just a crazy person, that's just a crutch for these kind of movies. And it also is the kind of thing that basically exploits, mental illness for the good of making an easy bad guy, 5. The dog. You see the dog at the beginning, and if you've watched any horror movies, you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, they're going to kill this dog. Well, these two filmmakers are especially egregious at this. For what I can see, they've made 2 major feature films that I know of. They may have made more, but the 2 they're known for are Goodnight Mommy and this movie, The Lodge. Goodnight Mommy, they prominently feature a cat who is dead and ends up in a tank, and there's all this stuff with the dead cat. And it's kind of just used for instant sympathy, instant shock value. And it's cheap. Now in this one, the dog plays a similar purpose, but even worse. Logically, it makes no sense. So we're supposed to think that this dog is let out. I guess when they're hiding everything, they let the dog out. Now, there is some question whether it was accidental or on purpose. Either way, the dog is out now in this blindingly cold environment. And the only options that you're left with are either the kids actively killed the dog, which you're not really supposed to believe that. I mean, you're supposed to believe they're pretty sinister, but they're not that evil. But maybe they are. I don't know. Or you're supposed to believe the dog is just out there and ran away or something. And you're supposed to believe the dog is just going to let itself freeze to death, even though it knows its owner is inside that house. You would think the dog would come and scratch at the door, cry, whine, try to get in. It would be common sense to believe the dog would do that, but there's no indication that that happened. 6. They use other movies as a cheap plot point or exposition to try to make this movie seem better, or to use as shorthand symbolism, which is also cheap. It's real common in movies like Halloween or something like that. You'll see that like while they're there in the background, they'll have like Night of the Living Dead on or something. That's a pretty common kind of thing. And it's just kind of a way to like let people know like, hey, I also like horror movies kind of a thing. But in this one, they're trying to use it as symbolism. So you get things like Jack Frost and The Thing. And for the viewer like me, all that does is remind you of a couple things. One thing that says like, oh, okay, we can't really explain our metaphors clearly in this movie. We are going to do it in this really cheap way by picking a better movie that everyone knows to kind of say like, hey, look, see what we're all about? We're all about this hidden threat that no one can recognize. It also, for me, just makes me go like, okay, that's the movie I want to be watching, the good movie, not the movie I'm actually watching. So it's a double-edged bad sword in this case, I think. Number 7. Can the kids really be that evil and calculating? At the beginning of the movie, you're basically shown that these kids are regular kids. The daughter's playing with dolls and seems like a normal little girl. The kid that's a little older, he's maybe a little sullen, a little bit angsty, but no more than any teenager you would expect to be. Especially in the situation that we're shown, in that, their mom just killed herself and they resent the dad and the stepmom for causing that, at least somewhat. It makes sense that the teenage boy would be, at least a little bit sullen about that. And then we're supposed to believe by the end of the movie that they made this huge, elaborate, calculated plot to drive their stepmom to suicide. We are never shown anything about their personalities to let us know that they're that evil or that conniving or that psychotic or sociopathic, however you want to term what kind of person would do that. The fact that they're both doing that and they're both holding up that ruse to get her to that point is very, very, very high on the unbelievable meter. And once again is one of those things that angers me about the stupidity of this plot. We're supposed to just buy that. And you're supposed to go back and have this discovery. Like after you know the trick, you go back and watch and like, ooh, you see, they put the harness inside their pack when they were packing up. It's like, really? They really planned this all out? And they used the dollhouse to plan out their plan. It's like, really? Yeah, it's just unbelievable. 8. Overbearing religious foo. Religious imagery used for cheap effect. And you can see this right in the poster. You know, in the poster, they've got the snowflake with the upside down cross dripping blood. And then another one, they show a close-up of, you know, the stepmom's eyes, and reflected in there are little reflections of crosses. It makes you think this is somehow a demonic or devil type of movie. You know, there's some kind of demonic influence. There's some kind of evil. Okay, well, I guess you could kind of say that she has this kind of cult background, which is kind of a twisted version of Christianity, and that's what they're all about. But that's not the way it's presented. It's presented like there is an actual evil entity or something, and that's the way they're presenting it in the advertising materials. And then throughout the movie, there's all this stuff about her, you know, staring at the picture and the cross and all these things. And I guess you're supposed to think that she's haunted by her religious past. But it really comes across as if like something evil is going on, or she's evil and she can't look at those, like almost like a vampire, you know. I can't look at a cross. I can't look at a picture of a religious icon. All right, number 9, other obvious movie references. Once again, this is a thing that they do throughout, and I already mentioned the Hereditary and the Shining stuff, but that's not it. They're all the way through, they're using other movies to kind of prop this one up, which makes it, to me, even worse. Goodnight Mommy was a big example of this. I mean, I knew the twist almost immediately because I'd seen a movie from the 70s called The Others, or The Other, I'm sorry. The Other is almost the same story. Now, I don't know if they knew that, but it's pretty bad if it's that similar. Whereas this movie, like we already said, they got The Shining, you've got Hereditary. On top of that, you actually have, and here we go again, The Others. It has a lot of similarities to The Others in that way, especially before the reveal happens and they might be in purgatory. I mean, that's almost exactly like The Others. So in 2 movies, they've got 2 movies that they referenced, The Other and The Others. Interesting. Another one is like The Turn of the Screw, which got made recently as The Turning, but has been made as the Innocents a long time ago. There's a lot of similarities to that as well. It's just not an original story, and it could have been. You know, the whole thing of the cult and her being raised in that cult could have been a whole interesting element of the story, but it wasn't. It was just like a hook. It was just like a crutch to explain how she might go insane. Just cheap. And then finally, the worst of all is that this whole movie squanders the potential of the filmmakers. You can tell by the acting, you can tell by the cinematography, the shot placements, the movement of things, that these are technically skilled filmmakers, but they're squandering it on this trashy, stupid story. Stupid. All right, well, that is all. I am sorry that I had to watch this movie, and hopefully this will keep you from watching it. Bye.